The house still smelled like cinnamon candles and roasted sweet potatoes. Even though the laughter had already faded into sharp silence, Lorraine Holt sat at the edge of the long dining table. Her hands resting in her lap, the silver bracelet her late husband had given her years ago cool against her skin. All around her, the remnants of Christmas dinner lay untouched collard greens gone cold, cornbread half-eaten, the carved ham drying out on its platter. It should have been a peaceful night. Her family gathered in the house she'd built with Hal 40 years ago. Instead, her daughter-in-law Tiana was standing in front of her. Arms crossed, face set like stone. "You need to start paying rent." "Lorraine," Tiana said, her voice rising just enough for everyone at the table to hear. "$1,200 a month, or—" She glanced at Marcus, her husband Lorraine's only son, before finishing, "You single quotes LL have to move out." Lorraine blinked slowly, thinking maybe she'd misheard. The words didn't seem real. "Pay rent? In my own house?" Tiana rolled her eyes, the gloss on her lips catching the warm light. "It's our house now. You signed it over to Marcus last year, remember? You said it was to make things easier down the line." Across the table, Marcus looked anywhere but at his mother. Their two kids, Jaden and Maya, stared into their phones, pretending not to notice the tension thickening the air. Lorraine's voice came out quiet, measured. "And where exactly am I supposed to get that kind of money, baby? My pension barely covers groceries." Tiana shrugged, one manicured hand flicking toward the door. "That's not my problem. You either contribute like an adult or find somewhere else to stay. We're not running a charity." For a moment, all Lorraine could hear was the faint hum of the fridge in the kitchen. Her heart beat slow, heavy. She turned to her son. "Marcus, you can let her talk to me like that." He finally looked up. His jaw was tight, his voice colder than she'd ever heard it. "Ma, it's fair. You've been living here rent-free for years. Welcome to the real world." Something inside her, something soft and trusting, snapped clean in two. She didn't shout. She didn't beg. Lorraine Holt just stood up, straightened her cardigan, and smoothed the front of her slacks. "Well," she said, her voice calm enough to cut glass. "Thank you for dinner." She walked back through the living room she'd decorated herself, the pictures on the walls staring down at her wedding photos. Marcus's graduation, her grandchildren as babies. She didn't take any of them down. She just kept walking through the hall, out the side door, into the converted garage she'd been calling her suite. Behind her, laughter started up again at the table, forced and hollow. Lorraine shut the door, leaned against it, and let the quiet swallow her whole. In the stillness, one thought bloomed. Slow and certain, they think, "I'm helpless. They don't know who they dealing with." Lorraine sat on the edge of the narrow bed in her little suite, staring at the half-packed boxes. The room used to be Hal's workshop, full of his tools, his smell, his laughter. She remembered how he'd spent weekends building shelves, fixing old radios, always humming some Al Green tune under his breath. After he passed, Marcus and Tiana had helped her turn it into a living space, or so she'd thought. Now it just felt like a holding cell. She folded her church dresses one by one, careful not to wrinkle them. Her hands moved automatically, muscle memory from a lifetime of caring for others. Her patients, her son, her husband. But tonight her fingers shook. Every motion felt heavy. On the dresser sat an old jewelry box Hal had given her when they'd first married. She opened it, not for the gold or the pearls, but for the small manila envelope tucked beneath the lining, the one her lawyer had handed her months ago after Hal's funeral. Back then, she hadn't had the heart to open it. Her name was written neatly on the front in blue ink, for Mrs. Lorraine Holt, confidential. Her chest tightened. She took a deep breath, slid a finger under the seal, and pulled out a letter along with several crisp documents. As she read, the words slowly began to rearrange her entire world. Hal had left her everything. Not just the little bit she'd assumed, but all his life insurance. His savings, the stock dividends he'd quietly invested in for 20 years. He'd even arranged for a financial advisor to manage it until she was ready. Lorraine blinked hard, her heart pounding in disbelief. She wasn't broke. She wasn't struggling. She wasn't trapped. She was sitting on a fortune her son didn't even know existed. A soft laugh escaped her lips, the kind of sound that comes when pain meets revelation. She shook her head slowly, feeling her shoulders ease for the first time in months. Lord, you really don't miss a thing, do you? She whispered. She walked to the small window, watching the last flicker of Christmas lights outside. The cold December air fogged the glass as she whispered to herself, they wanted me to pay rent in my own home. Well, baby, I'll give them exactly what they asked for. Lorraine wiped her eyes, stood tall, and began packing with new purpose. The hurt was still there, but under it, something stronger was waking up. Something she hadn't felt since before Hal died. Power. Before the night was over. Her suitcases were zipped, her Bible was tucked under her arm, and the last of her clothes were stacked neatly by the door. The only sound in the room was the faint hum of her old heater, and the quiet click of her phone as she sent one simple text to a rideshare driver. Pick up at 1477 West Cascade. Side door. Cash tip. The black sedan rolled to a stop at the end of a quiet cul-de-sac in South Fulton. The night was still, the street lamps humming low, their lights spilling across manicured lawns and new brick homes. Lorraine stepped out with her luggage. Her coat collar turned up against the cold. She paused at the gate of her house, a single-story brick beauty with white shutters and a porch swing that caught the moonlight just right. The deed was in her name only, bought with the life insurance money Hal had left behind. She'd never told Marcus about it. Back then, she'd thought it might be a safety net. Just in case. And now, just in case had finally come. She walked up the porch steps, her breath visible in the chill. The front door opened with a satisfying click. Inside, everything was clean and waiting. Fresh paint, new furniture, warm light spilling from the lamp she'd picked herself. It smelled faintly of lavender and lemon polish. Lorraine stood there for a moment, her heart swelling with something close to peace. This is mine. All mine. She set down her bags, hung her coat on the hook by the door, and smiled to herself. Welcome home, Miss Lorraine, she whispered. The house felt like it was listening. After a hot shower and a change into her soft flannel pajamas. She brewed a pot of mint tea and sat at the small kitchen table with her laptop. Her reflection in the screen looked older than she remembered, not weak, just worn. But the eyes staring back were sharp again. She opened her email and began typing to Deshaun Miller, her financial advisor, the man Hal had trusted with everything. Deshaun, please proceed with the changes we discussed months ago. Cancel all automatic payments to Marcus and Tiana Holt, including car insurance policy. #8934, Marcus Holt, family cell plan, 3 lines. Credit. Card authorized users, remove both, monthly. Transfer to joint savings, terminate immediately. Also, please update my beneficiaries. Remove Marcus Holt and replace with Southside Elders Outreach Center and Atlanta Women's Shelter, as outlined in my file. Effective immediately. Her finger hovered over the send button. She took a slow sip of her tea, exhaled, and clicked. A small whoosh sounded as the email disappeared, and just like that, so did their lifeline. Lorraine leaned back, watching steam rise from her cup. For years, she'd paid every bill, bailed them out of credit card debt, helped with the grandkids' tuition, groceries, everything. They had taken and she had given, out of love, but love wasn't supposed to feel like servitude. She turned off the light and went to bed, the sheets warm against her skin. Outside, the wind whispered through the trees. For the first time in a long time, she didn't fall asleep worrying who might need her next. She drifted off smiling. Not out of revenge, but relief. Tomorrow, they'd find out what happens when you bite the hand that feeds you. Lorraine woke to sunlight spilling across her face, warm and soft. For a second, she didn't know where she was. Then she saw the pale gold curtains, the polished wood floors, the fresh flowers on the knitstand, and remembered. Freedom had a scent. It smelled like lemon cleaner, linen sheets, and peace. She took her time that morning. Made herself grits and eggs, sliced a peach, and brewed a full pot of coffee. No one knocking. No one asking, did you pay this bill yet? Or can you watch the kids while we go out? Just silence and her gospel station humming in the background. Around 9, her phone buzzed. Marcus. Then again, Tiana. Then a stream of messages lit the screen. Ma, where you at? You can't just leave like that. Tiana said your stuff's gone. What's going on? We need to talk. Lorraine stared at the screen, sipping her coffee. For years, she'd answered every call from her son, dropped everything, no matter the hour. But this time, her thumb hovered over the reply, then slid down instead. Block. The peace that followed felt like sunlight breaking through clouds. She spent the rest of the morning arranging her home, putting Hal's old records on the shelf, folding throw blankets just so, placing their wedding photo on the mantel. The rhythm of the day soothed her nerves. By afternoon, she'd unpacked most of her things, showered again, and settled in with her sewing kit. The hum of the machine filled the quiet house as she repaired a torn hem on one of her dresses. That's when the doorbell rang. Once. Twice. Then pounding. Double quotes. Ma. Open up, Marcus's voice. Her hands froze mid-stitch. He kept banging. I know you're in there. What the hell, Ma? You can't just disappear like that. We've been calling you all morning. Lorraine didn't move, didn't speak. From the corner of the window, she could see his car in the driveway, engine still running. He looked frantic, stomping around the porch like a man who'd lost control of his own house, which, in a way, he had. Ma! Don't play with me! Lorraine took a slow breath, threaded her needle, and kept sewing. The pounding grew louder. You can't just cut us off. That's wrong, Ma. You raised me better than this. She whispered under her breath. Apparently not. After another minute, the banging stopped. She heard his angry muttering fade as he stomped back to the car, the door slamming shut. Tires screeched down the street. Lorraine exhaled. Her hands were steady again. The only sound left was the gentle whir of her sewing machine and the rhythm of her own heartbeat. Steady. Sure. And finally free. When the last seam was done, she held the dress up to the light. Perfect. She smiled, whispering to herself, You gone learn today. Marcus Holt, every last one of you gone learn. Days passed in a quiet rhythm Lorraine hadn't known she was missing. She woke when her body said so, not when someone shouted her name from the kitchen. Her mornings started with gospel music and sunlight, her afternoons with a walk through the neighborhood. Folks waved at her, neighbors who didn't know her story but smiled just the same. She took joy in small things again, frying catfish just the way Hal liked, lighting a vanilla candle at dusk, watching the local news while sipping sweet tea. The peace was simple, and she guarded it like gold, but peace doesn't last long when guilt comes calling. It started with another number she didn't recognize one evening. Against her better judgment, she picked up double quotes Ma. Marcus's voice cracked on the other end. Finally. You've been ignoring me for days. What is going on? Lorraine took a slow breath, steady but calm. I've been resting, baby. Something I ain't done in a long time. I went to pay the car insurance this morning, he said sharply, and they told me it was canceled. My phone's been shut off. You cut everything. I did. She set her teacup down, unbothered. Those accounts were in my name, Marcus. I've been carrying y'all for 3 years now. Rent, groceries, light bill, tuition, everything. You said you wanted me to live in the real world? Well, that's exactly what you're getting now. There was silence, then disbelief. Ma, you can't just do this. We have bills. The kids got 2 working parents last I checked, she interrupted. Her voice didn't rise, didn't shake. Marcus, I love you. But love don't mean letting people use you. I let it go too far. That's on me. He tried to soften his tone. You can't be serious. You ain't got nobody but me. Lorraine smiled sadly. And somehow that turned into you thinking you owned me. You and that wife of yours need to figure out your own way now. His anger rose fast. Tiana didn't mean what she said that night. She was stressed than she should have thought before she opened her mouth. Lorraine's voice sharpened just enough to slice through the phone. Because when you speak on where somebody belongs, you best be ready for them to show you they don't belong under your roof. She heard him inhale, a frustrated growl at the back of his throat. You're being petty. No, baby, she said softly. I'm being done. Before he could respond, she hung up. Then she pressed block number. That night, Lorraine slept like a child. The next morning, she got dressed in her favorite blue blouse, wrapped her curls in a soft headscarf, and caught the bus downtown. She'd read about Southside Elders Outreach Center, a place that helped seniors who'd been abandoned or pushed out by their families. She thought maybe she'd go volunteer a day or two a week, keep her hands busy, her heart humble. The center was warm and welcoming, full of laughter and the smell of cornbread. Lorraine was paired with Miss Vernal Brooks, a sharp-tongued woman with a cane and a smile that hid more pain than she let on. "Child, my daughter kicked me out for a home gym," Miss Vernal said matter-of-factly. "Said I was taking up too much space. Ain't that something? My body built hers, but I'm in the way." Lorraine laughed gently, even as her chest tightened. "I know that song, baby. Different verse, same hurt." By the end of the week, she knew half the folks by name. Mr. Clarence Dorsey, who'd given his son $50,000 and ended up living in his car. Miss Claudette Jones, whose 4 kids stopped calling the moment her Social Security check got garnished. Every story cracked something open in Lorraine. Not pain this time, but purpose. When she got home that evening, she called Deshawn Miller again and confirmed her donations to the Outreach Center and the Women's Shelter. Then with his guidance, she adjusted her will, every dime now set to go where it could do real good. That night, she sat by her window with a cup of chamomile tea, watching the sky fade to purple. The air smelled like rain, and peace wrapped around her shoulders like a shawl. Lorraine whispered to herself, "This is what God meant by deliverance. Not from the world, but from people who drain the life right out of you." Lorraine had learned to live quietly, but she hadn't forgotten how to move smart. One afternoon, she sat across from her new real estate attorney, a young black woman named Imani Reddick with box braids and the confidence of someone who knew her law cold. Lorraine had brought the deed papers for the house she'd transferred to Marcus, just to make sure everything was still in order, she'd said. But truthfully, she wanted to know exactly what kind of power she still had over it. Imani adjusted her glasses and flipped through the file. Her brows lifted. "Well, Mrs. Holt, it looks like your husband's lawyer had some foresight. There's a reversion clause in this deed." Lorraine leaned forward. "A what now?" "It means," Imani explained, "that if your son or his wife ever demanded rent or tried to evict you, ownership of the property automatically reverts to you. It's legally binding. You don't even have to file a suit unless they resist. The moment they told you to pay rent or leave, they broke the agreement." Lorraine sat back, stunned, and then a slow smile crept across her face. "So technically, the house already back in my name?" "Technically," Imani said, smiling too. "It's been yours since Christmas dinner." Lorraine chuckled under her breath. "Well, won't he do it?" She left the office that day walking a little taller, her purse swinging at her side, the late afternoon sun warming her back. The power she'd lost that night at the dinner table, she had it again, right in her hands. Only now she wasn't going to use it for vengeance. She was going to use it for peace. A week later, Peace decided to test her. Lorraine was pushing her cart through the produce aisle at the local Publix when she heard that too familiar voice. "Lorraine?" She froze for a moment, then turned. Tiana stood by the apples, a cart full of name-brand everything, chips, sodas, the works, and a baby pink purse slung over her shoulder. Her hair was laid, her nails fresh, but her eyes tired. Desperate, even. "Oh," Lorraine said coolly. "Didn't expect to see you out this way." Tiana forced a laugh. "Yeah, we had to switch stores. You know how that Kroger got prices going up and all?" Lorraine nodded, scanning a cantaloupe like she hadn't just caught her lie. Funny how that works when folks start paying their own bills." Tiana's smile faltered. "Marcus told me what you did. Cutting off the accounts, the car, the phones, everything. You left us hanging, Lorraine." "I didn't leave y'all hanging, baby," she said, calm as a still pond. "I just stopped holding y'all up." Tiana's voice hardened. "You think you teaching us some kind of lesson? You hurting your own family." Lorraine turned to face her fully now, her tone low but steady. "You hurt family when you disrespect it. When you look somebody in the eye, in the house they built, and tell them to pay rent or get out. That was you, remember?" Tiana's eyes glistened, though pride kept her chin up. "I was stressed, okay. You don't know how hard it is. I know exactly how hard it is." Lorraine interrupted, her voice softening just enough to sting. "I worked 2 jobs when Marcus was little. I lost my husband, buried my mama, and still paid every bill on time. The difference between us, Tiana, is I never forgot who helped me get where I am." For a moment, neither spoke. Just the hum of the refrigerators and a soft gospel song playing over the store speakers. Tiana's lip trembled, but she forced her tone steady. So what, you just gonna sit in your new house and act brand new? After everything? Lorraine gave a faint smile. I ain't actin'. I just finally remembered who I am. She turned her cart and began walking away, her heels clicking softly on the polished floor. Behind her, Tiana's voice broke. Quieter now. You really done with us, ain't you? Lorraine paused, glancing back over her shoulder. No, baby. I'm just done being your doormat. She left Tiana standing between the apples and the onions, tears smudging her mascara dot. As Lorraine stepped out into the afternoon sun, she felt lighter than she had in years. The world didn't owe her peace. She had made her own. And for the first time in a long while, she didn't feel guilty about choosing herself. Lorraine's new life unfolded softly, like dawn breaking over the city. Mornings came slower now, a gospel hum over coffee, sunlight slipping through lace curtains, the scent of magnolia and peace drifting through her open windows. She spent her days doing things she never had time for when her life revolved around other people's needs. Mondays were for her book club at the South Fulton Library, where a circle of women laughed over dog-eared romance novels and traded cornbread recipes like secrets. Wednesdays, she joined a watercolor class at the Community Arts Center, where she painted sunrise after sunrise, her favorite color always, the gold that looked like new beginnings. She smiled more these days. Smiled for herself. One afternoon she sat by the window, painting a field of sunflowers when her phone buzzed, a video call from Bernice Langford, her oldest friend down in Jacksonville. Bernice had been with her through everything. Hal's funeral, the long, quiet months of loneliness, and now this unexpected rebirth. Lorraine Holt, look at you. Bernice's laugh boomed through the screen. You glowing girl. What's in that Georgia water? Lorraine chuckled, wiping paint from her fingers. Peace, baby. That's what's in it. Pure peace. Bernice grinned, leaning closer to the camera. So tell me the truth. You still thinking about that boy of yours? Lorraine sighed. He crosses my mind sometimes. But you know, Bernice, I realized something. I spent half my life making sure Marcus had everything, a roof, a future, a mother who'd catch him every time he fell. But I never stopped to ask who was catching me. Bernice's eyes softened. That's the wisdom of age, honey. Sometimes you gotta love folks from a distance so you don't lose yourself up close. Lorraine nodded slowly. That's exactly what I'm doing. They talked for hours about old church gossip, the best greens recipe, and plans for Bernice to come visit once the spring blooms hit Georgia. By the time they hung up, the sun had dipped behind the trees, and Lorraine felt that rare, beautiful calm that comes from knowing you've survived the storm. Weeks turned into months. Lorraine kept volunteering at the Southside Elders Outreach Center, helping new faces who reminded her of herself before she found her strength. She taught them how to protect their finances, how to write their wills, how to say no without guilt. Each story she heard, each broken-hearted elder who'd been used and discarded, reminded her why she'd drawn her boundaries. But now, instead of anger, she felt something else growing in her chest. Compassion. Not for Marcus and Tiana. They had their journey to walk, but for herself. For the woman who had once thought being good meant being small. One Sunday after church, as she sat on her porch swing watching kids ride bikes down the street, Lorraine whispered to herself, I'm not mad no more, just free. The word lingered in the air like a hymn, soft, strong, and holy. It was a breezy April morning when Lorraine's phone rang. She was trimming her rose bush in the front yard, humming an old Aretha tune, when she saw Miss Janine Carter's name flash across the screen, her old neighbor from the house on Cascade. Hey, Miss Janine. How you doing, baby? Lorraine said, wiping her hands on her gardening apron. Janine's voice came fast, low and half-whispered, like somebody afraid of being overheard. Lorraine, girl, you sitting down? You not gonna believe this. Marcus and Tiana got a for sale sign in your yard. Lorraine blinked. In my yard? That's what I said. Big O for sale by owner sign too. Been showing the place to folks all weekend. A slow smile crept across Lauren's face, not out of spite, but out of pure, righteous satisfaction. Oh, is that right? They lookin' desperate, honey. Told one couple they'd tryna downsize. Janine lowered her voice even more. But between you and me, I think they can't afford that place no more. Lorraine chuckled. Well, bless they hearts. The minute she hung up, she walked inside, poured herself a glass of sweet tea, and called Imani Reddick, her attorney. Imani, baby. Looks like it's time to use that clause we talked about. By the next morning, papers were already in motion. Imani filed notice with the county recorder's office, reactivating the reversion clause that automatically transferred ownership back to Lorraine Holt. Marcus and Tiana were legally tenants, now unauthorized ones at that dot 2 days later. Loren's phone lit up again. Marcus. She didn't block him this time. She wanted him to hear the calm in her voice. Ma. He barked before she could say a word. What did you do? We got a letter from some lawyer saying you own the house again. This a joke? No joke, Lorraine said, stirring sugar into her tea. You remember that night you told me to pay rent or leave? He went quiet. Well, she continued, her voice smooth and steady, seems that little statement of yours activated a clause in your daddy's old paperwork. So by law, baby, that house is mine again. Been mine since the moment you tried to charge me rent. That's crazy. You can't just... I can. And I did. The Lord don't play about the righteous. She could hear Tiana in the background, her voice rising like a kettle on boil. She stole our house. Lorraine almost laughed. I didn't steal nothing, Tiana. You gave it away when you forgot who built it. Marcus's tone cracked, anger mixing with disbelief. You really gonna put us out, Ma? After everything? Lorraine sighed. After everything, yes. You and Tiana wanted to run that house like a business. Well, baby, I'm just setting the accounts straight. He cursed under his breath, then the line went dead. Lorraine stared at her phone for a long moment, not angry, not smug, just sad for what they'd become. But deep down, she also felt justice. A quiet kind of justice that didn't need applause. The next week, Imani called to confirm. They tried to list the property again, but the title's legally yours now. I filed everything. They can't sell it, can't rent it, can't even refinance it without your say-so. Lorraine smiled. Thank you, baby. You just bought me my peace of mind. When she hung up, she stepped out onto her porch and watched the sunset bleed orange and pink across the Georgia sky. The air was cool and smelled faintly of honeysuckle. Harold, she whispered softly to the wind, you'd be proud. Your girl finally learned how to stand her ground. For the first time since that cruel Christmas dinner, she didn't feel like somebody's burden. She felt like a woman who had reclaimed her story. One page at a time, Lorraine knew things were coming to a head when the court papers arrived at her door. Marcus had actually filed a motion to contest the reversion clause, a last, desperate attempt to hang on to the house he'd once called hers. She didn't get angry. She didn't even go to the hearing. Imani called that morning, her voice cool and composed. Mrs. Holt, don't worry about showing up today. I've got everything covered. The paperwork's airtight. He doesn't have a leg to stand on. Lorraine sat at her kitchen table, sipping her morning coffee, while across town her son stood in front of a judge trying to defend what wasn't his dot by afternoon. The phone rang. It's done, Imani said. Judge ruled in your favor. The house officially reverts to you. They've got 30 days to vacate. Lorraine closed her eyes for a moment. Thank you, baby. She hung up, leaned back, and exhaled a long, tired breath. Not relief, not really. More like the slow release of something she'd been carrying far too long. She didn't dance, didn't celebrate. She just whispered, Lord, let me hold on to peace, not pride. 2 weeks later, she drove by the old house. The yard was overgrown, the paint peeling from the porch. Marcus's car sat crook in the driveway, piled high with boxes. She didn't stop. Just slowed enough to see her old magnolia tree still standing tall, its branches thick with white blooms. By the end of the month, Imani confirmed they were gone. The house keys arrived in a plain manila envelope with no note. Just silence where a son's love used to be. Lorraine didn't cry. She'd done that already, in the quiet hours when nobody saw. Now it was time to move forward. She sold the house a few months later to a young black couple, newlyweds, expecting their first child. They walked through the front door holding hands, eyes full of hope and wonder. It reminded her of her and Hal way back when life still had that soft shine. At closing, when she signed the final papers, she asked the realtor to donate every cent of her profit, nearly $200,000, split evenly between Southside Elders Outreach Center and Atlanta Women's Shelter. When Deshaun Miller, her financial advisor, called to confirm, his voice trembled a little. "Mrs. Holt, you sure about this? That's a lot of money." Lorraine smiled. "I'm sure, baby. That house gave me everything I needed: lessons, memories, strength. Time to let it give back." That evening, she stood on her porch with a warm cup of tea and watched the sky blush gold. The cicadas were singing, the air heavy with Georgia summer, and for the first time, the ache in her chest didn't hurt. It just hummed. She thought about the elders she'd met at the outreach center: Miss Vernal, Mr. Clarence, Miss Claudette, and how they'd all survived some kind of heartbreak. Maybe that was life's real test. Not how much you lose, but how much you rise after losing. Lorraine whispered softly, "We still here. We still stand in." The words hung in the humid air, drifting upward like a prayer. 1 year later, Lorraine's days moved at the gentle pace of a woman who had made peace with her past. The house in South Fulton felt alive now, filled with music, flowers, and the soft murmur of her sewing machine. The air smelled like lavender and cornbread most days. On Sundays, she still sat in the same pew at church, singing low and sweet, her voice steady as the years behind her. After service, she'd linger under the oak trees with friends, laughing about choir robes and stubborn knees. The kind of talk that comes easy when your spirit is light. Everyone noticed it, the glow in her skin, the quiet confidence in her stride. Lorraine wasn't the woman who'd once begged for space in her own home. She was someone new, someone whole. That spring, Bernice Langford came up from Jacksonville for a visit. The two old friends sat on the porch, sipping peach tea while the neighborhood kids played tag in the street. "Girl," Bernice said with a grin, "you look good. Like life finally stopped sitting heavy on you." Lorraine chuckled. "It did. Took me near 70 years to realize peace don't come from what you hold on to. It comes from what you let go." Bernice nodded, eyes glistening. "You heard from Marcus?" Lorraine's smile dimmed but didn't falter. "Not a word. Not a call, not a card. But that's all right. I stopped waiting. He's grown. He'll find his way. Maybe when he remembers who taught him how." They sat quiet for a while, the breeze tugging gently at the magnolia blossoms. Then Bernice reached over and squeezed her hand. "You did right, Lorraine. Don't let anybody tell you otherwise." "I know I did," Lorraine said softly. "Love without boundaries ain't love. It's surrender. And I ain't surrenderin' no more." That evening, after Bernice left, Lorraine stood in her backyard watching the sunset burn gold across the Georgia sky. She thought about Hal, about their life together, the laughter, the long nights, the struggle, the grace. She thought about Marcus too, and though her heart still ached, it no longer bled. She took a deep breath and smiled. "I forgive you, baby," she whispered to the wind. "But I ain't ever going back." Then she walked inside, put a record on, an old Etta James tune, and let it play while she cooked dinner for one. The song filled the house like a prayer set to melody, wrapping around her like the arms of a life well lived. Lorraine didn't need applause. She didn't need validation. She had something far better: her peace, her dignity, and her story, and maybe, just maybe, some woman out there, tired, overlooked, carrying everybody else's weight, would hear it one day and finally whisper to herself, "I'm done being their anchor. It's time to sail."